Happy New Stuff Week, everybody. This is Keylime here again with another weekly preview, and we've got a lot of stuff going on all the platforms, so make sure you strap in and, get your popcorn, etc., etc. It's going to be a bit. So I got some stuff to talk through. First of all, make sure you jump into your adventure board. There are Deeds of Ice in there. So get your Imperial Deeds, get your Deeds of Ice. I strongly recommend you chucking them into Merlantis since they have the faction bonus underneath, and they actually have some decent troops. And they take blue, which does not overlap with any magic or attack, so my personal recommendation is blue. If you feel like understanding why, feel free to check out my Deeds guide. However, on the PC side of things, we have a event, and that event is an invasion. So the invasion this time around is Mystic oriented, so we're going to have to jump in there and use some Mystic-y kinds of troops. As far as a team that you could be using, this is what I would be running with. So this is basically a Mang with an Azora and a Sekma and a Luna. So this is really just all about having some AoE damage sources, some mana generation. Azora blows up the board, Sekma converts things into yellow, which will blow up the board for Luna. Luna does lots of weird status effecty things for yourself and potentially harming them. And of course Mang there just to get tons of attacks. So this should be relatively safe and easy to use. So feel free to check that out. As far as the event keys that we got that go with this, it's for Karakoth. So Karakoth is kind of an underwhelming kingdom, unfortunately. If we actually look at what's in there, you'll see that I am not really going to recommend really opening up any event keys in here. So Vash is in there. He's the most recently released mythic, which devours somebody on your team and then does scatter damage, scatter true damage based on all of that. He also curses a random enemy when matching brown. The cursing component of him, honestly, is a lot more useful than the devouring aspect of him. As of right now, I have not seen or created any interesting Vash Dagon team. At most, the value that I've seen him used for is putting him on a team just as a passive cursor. So I don't really recommend opening up much of anything. As far as Mystics are concerned, Medea is kind of good from a Mystic point of view. She does give everyone one magic on 4 or 5 gem matches. So as far as what you would want out of the event keys, there's nothing really in here. Like Medea is kind of never really used. However, for this event specifically, she could be potentially fun to use, but that's about it. So my personal recommendation is probably save your keys. As far as what's in the Glory Shop this time around, if we actually look inside the Glory Shop, we have a Corrupt Magus. So Corrupt Magus is kind of crazy from a skill reduction point of view. So they're eliminating 29 from 2 random skills, and again 29 in my game, from 2 different skills and then cursing an enemy. So that's kind of crazy. So you can target this spell. So you target this at somebody, you'll dispel them, you'll curse them, then you'll take away almost 30 skills from that person, from 2 different skills. So in terms of like really neutering somebody, that's actually a pretty strong effect. I don't think I'm still going to use them, but it is kind of a pretty decent effect. It will be worth at least looking at this person every now and then. From a traits point of view, really nothing all too exciting, so we don't have to go too crazy in there. As far as the event is concerned, so the weapon that we're getting this time around is the Grasping Grimoire. So as expected, this is a mixed type based on Mystic allies. As far as the upgrades on the weapon go, there's really nothing all that awesome in there. So feel free to just level this up to like level 5 for the stats and then kind of leave it alone from there. As of this point in time, a pure Mystic lineup is not necessarily the greatest thing on the planet since we do not have a Mystic class just yet. So without a Mystic class, you're kind of limited by how much mana you can actually make with these things. The troop that we got this time around is Aramas. So Aramas is kind of doing this eliminating skill points thing as well. So they're herding up a tower, and then they're eliminating a bunch of skills from, there. I keep trying to like say this differently, and it's like, then eliminate 32 from 2 random skills. So this is kind of an awkward way of writing this. But anyway, hit a tower for a bunch of damage, and then take away a bunch of skills from there. And then ultimately they will do skull damage to towers. So you could potentially, theoretically, try and run them in the first slot if you'd like. I generally do not recommend running them in the first slot unless there's some obvious way of protecting them. I don't really think we have one. So that's what's going on there. Feel free to get my team in the description for the video. In the Soulforge this time around, from a troops point of view, there's kind of nothing super crazy. So Pharos is in there if you need Pharos Ra. So if you're somebody who's still trying to farm up some souls, potentially to get a Dawnbringer, or just having trouble with souls in general, Pharos is kind of a staple for getting souls. So as you can see, their ability gets you a decent amount of souls. That does do some interesting mechanics as far as what's going on. So it does convert mana and then do damage boosted by the amount of souls you have 1-to-1. And the nice thing about Pharos is that you gain 150% bonus souls from battles, so your theoretical max on how many souls you can get per fight is higher, and that means that the amount of damage they can do is higher, and every time you basically only need to cast them 3 times if they're the only person on your team that's giving you souls to get max souls and max damage. So Pharos, somebody that you could theoretically be using if you are fishing for souls. I don't always really consider Pharos a must-craft, however, a lot of people in the community consider Pharos an absolute must-craft. I'm not sure I'm with them on that one. If you are struggling with souls, however, Pharos could absolutely be somebody to help you out. Queen Aurora is the other person that's in there that might be worth taking a glance at. So they are a very defensive troop. They're giving barrier to everybody and life to everybody and creating a bunch of mana of your choosing, and they also gain bonus mana from literally every single gem match. So any color that you match, you will get an extra +1 bonus mana. Pretty cool. One downside with this troop, of course, is that it doesn't barrier or give them self-life. So they don't give them self-barrier or life, it's everybody else on the team. So keep that in mind. But those are the two that I think are worth glancing at as far as the Mythics that are available. In the Soulforge for weapons, there's really nothing. Doom Cauldron not worth looking at, so do not do it. And then we get to the spoilers section. Spoilers. So as far as what's going on in the Faction Assault, we have the Warrens on Tuesday. So Tuesday, make sure you jump in, get your Delvies in. So as far as a team that you could be using, this is a team that I generally run through this with. So I will make sure to post that in the description. On Wednesday, we have a pet, Krabby. So anyone that tunes into my streams knows that it was destined that we would have a crab pet week this week, because that's kind of awesome. As far as the class event that we have, so the class event that we've got coming up on Thursday is a Sorcerer class. So Sorcerer, not necessarily the best class on the planet. I really don't think we have a great reason to try and level this up. If this was a Mystic class, that might be a little more different. But as it stands, not necessarily the best class. Nothing too interesting here as far as the traits go. Nothing too crazy as far as the talent tree goes. Unfortunately, not the best class on the planet. But if you do feel like leveling it up, it's out there. And then, when it comes to Friday, we get all kinds of crazy going on. So, on Friday, we have a new delve. So, new delve layout looks like this. So, it looks like there's a couple branching paths that you could potentially jump through. As far as pathing goes, it doesn't look like it's going to be the most farmable. I imagine you're probably going to have to fight at least 4 fights to get to the boss, so not going to be the most farmable thing on the planet. It's going to be restricted by green and red, so make sure you keep your eyes out for that. That means it's a no Iron Gut delve, so that means people are going to actually have to try this time around. Ha ha ha! Ha ha! Okay, anyway. So then we get to look at the troops that come with it. And before I look at the troops real quick, since the Mythic is kind of hidden in there, this is a Mythic that you're absolutely going to want to get. This is also coming out new on Friday. This is the Grey King. He is a maniac. He is a machine. So look at what this dude does. Look at him. First, look how regal he is. That's kind of great. But then when we look at his ability, for only 22 mana, we get to destroy all the gems of a chosen color, which means you gain all of that mana. And then all enemies of that color take magic plus 9 true damage. So that's kind of nuts. And then mana is drained from them, and they are silenced, and they are frozen. So just imagine how annoying this is going to be on Guild Wars defense teams, where you know the entire other team is going to be taking a single color. The only reason that won't be insanely busted is because you can't trust the AI to know that it should pick the right color. But in terms of if you're looking at a team that's using all the same color or a lot of the same color, This effect is going to be devastating. All of their mana is going to be drained, they'll all get silenced, and you'll freeze them all. Some of like the strongest debuffs in the game, and the amount of damage it does is pretty great, and it has mana generation tied to it. Just the spell effect is crazy good. Once we get to the traits, all undead allies gaining 2 armor and magic on 4 or more gems. So now we also have stat pumping for undead. There are a couple of undead classes. There's some undead troops. However, undead unfortunately isn't the best type of troop out there, but they exist, and you can do cool things with them. So the Grey King, I think, is going to be one of those top tier mythics that you should get your hands on. In terms of what he does, he's extremely interesting and devastating. So I strongly recommend you go get yourself a Grey King, save all your keys. Again, he will be in VIP keys, he will be in glory keys, he will be in gem keys, he will be in guild seals. So please save all your stuff for this Friday and then jump in there. All of that is just to say that for the new Delve, as far as troops go, so there's 4 new troops that come with this. So we have Puka, which is somebody hold her hair back, so that's kind of funny. So drain up to 12 mana and then create red gems equal to the mana drained. So this is kind of like a Nyx style type troop. As far as their traits, there's really nothing too crazy. They do inflict Hunter's Mark when they take skull damage. That's kind of interesting. This entire faction has like Hunter's Mark mechanics with it, so noteworthy, but not necessarily the best troop. As far as what Red Cap is all about, so they're doing true damage to an enemy, and if the enemy has Hunter's Mark, then you Fairy Fire all enemies. So Fairy Firing all enemies is kind of crazy, and you'll see that this person is also doing Hunter's Mark when they take skull damage, and they start battles with 50% mana. So starting with 50% mana isn't really all that exciting or super crazy or effective per se, just because it's not a mana generation kind of troop. It does kind of give you a quick Fairy Fire option, so if you're able to get Fairy Fire on all the enemies, Fairy Fire of course does 50% extra magic damage every time you hit them. So as far as having a easy Fairy Fire to everybody, that's kind of interesting. The legendary in there is Wendigo. So Wendigo is just doing damage to all, not a ton of damage to all since it's going to be basically half their magic, boosted by Hunter's Marked enemies, however. So the boost on Hunter's Mark is 5x, so 5x means that if all 4 people are Hunter's Marked, it'll be doing an extra 20, so that's probably why the half magic thing is in there. It's expecting you to get a lot of benefit from that boost. And then if an enemy dies, you bless everybody on your team, so that's kind of fun. But here is your Hunter's Mark mechanic, where it's Hunter's Marking a random enemy when you match red gems. So just matching red gems is going to get you a bunch of Hunter's Marks out on the board. And then finally we've got the Wild Knight. Wild Knight is exploding a gem, and then it gives life and attack, boosted by green gems destroyed with 3x. So in terms of life and attack gaining, this isn't really all super crazy. It's not going to be awful, but it's not super crazy. And then they get barrier. So this person is the most obvious frontline tank that they've got in this entire setup. So this is a skull reduction going on here. They also inflict Hunter's Mark when they take skulls. They've got some method of boosting their life and attack. They can give themselves barrier. So this is your frontline as far as a pure faction is going to go. Also worth noting is that this weapon is coming with the new faction, the Wild Court, and it is kind of stupid, crazy. So what this thing is all about is doing true damage to an enemy, and if that enemy has Hunter's Mark on them, it'll do triple damage to them. So it's already going to be doing true damage, but now it's going to be doing triple damage if they have Hunter's Mark, and then it puts a Hunter's Mark on them. Oh, and then guess what? It actually Hunter's Marks all enemies every time you use it. So this weapon is going to not only be doing a lot of true damage, but it's also going to be Hunter's Marking literally everybody. It also creates a Leaf Storm, which is insanely useful and effective, considering that this weapon is now basically like the Hunter class, the Archer class in a weapon. So a lot of these things is why you would pick an Archer. So you would pick an Archer as a class because it's someone that gets a Leaf Storm start and does a lot of Hunter's Marks on 4 or 5s. This weapon now is doing true damage to people that happen to have Hunter's Marks, and then it Hunter's Marks everybody. So this weapon is going to be insanely interesting to see how we use this thing. I think it's going to have a lot of potential. So make sure you're definitely going in and getting that weapon in the faction assault this time around. It is an absolute must get. But that is the delve that's going on. So the Great King, of course, to me is the most exciting thing that's going on within this delve. Absolutely awesome, absolutely must get. But that is everything going on the PC, mobile, Xbox, PS4 side of things. It's a lot. I hope you stayed till the end. But let's jump over to our Switchy Switch folks. Good morning, Switchers. So, on the Switch side of things, of course, make sure you're jumping in and do your adventure board. There are Deeds of Ice in there. I recommend chucking in Merlantis because there's all kinds of fun bonuses. It is not taking any stats away from from magic or attack, which I would prioritize highest. However, this will get you the life stat. This will get you some other fun stuff with Merlantis. I have a deed guide out there which kind of talks you through why I pick what I pick, but I recommend chucking them into Merlantis personally. Feel free to check out the guide if you want to know why. But besides all that fun stuff, we got an event this time around, and the event that you guys have is a Tower of Doom with Brown. So that's kind of fun, but let's check out what's in the event keys. So for the event keys for you guys, it is Broken Spire. So Broken Spire, if we go look at what might be in there, there's somebody interesting. It's Infernus. So Infernus is in the event key pool this time around. So Infernus is somebody that I rate extremely highly for a couple reasons. One being that he's just a very overall effective troop. He's just a good all-around kind of troop where he does damage that's very noticeable, considerable. He explodes the board, so he has some loop potential. You can potentially build some loops with this guy. He burns all enemies on 4 or 5s, which is extremely effective, and I will explain why in a second. But then he also summons a firestorm when an enemy dies. Since he takes red himself, it makes it very easy to fill into himself. So this burning all enemies thing, this really pairs nicely with certain classes. There's the Sunspear class, there's the Warlord class, there's other classes that you guys will get access to later on, which has the Fire Tree, and the level 100 talent is Fire Blade. So having one of those classes up to 100, running them with Infernus means that you're dealing triple skull damage on your hero, which is gross. So, Infernus, incredible. If you do not have him, I insanely recommend opening up event keys and praying that you get Mr. Infernus. The good news, or bad news, depending on how you want to take it, is that there's really nothing else too crazy in here as far as something worth chasing. There's some valuable troops in here, but nothing that I would open up event keys to get, per se. Like, Flame Troll is very interesting, for instance. The Troll troops are all useful in their own respect. But if you're opening up event keys, you're doing it for Infernus. There's really nothing else in there worth trying to chase. Beyond all of that, you guys got a new glory troop. So you got Mr. Rhynagor. Let's see if I can spell it. Nailed it. Rhynagor. So what he's all about is he's doing splash damage to somebody, which means full damage to whoever it targets and then half damage to whoever is adjacent to them. And then if they die, then it gains 12 mana. It takes 12 mana, so basically you get your spell back if you actually kill somebody with this. I think that sounds cooler than it actually is, since it still doesn't have any loop potential. 12 mana isn't all that complicated to gain, so I wouldn't look at this troop as somebody that's like super amazing, super busted. I can just cast him over and over and over again. It's not necessarily that powerful. Certainly not a terrible troop, but not nearly as interesting as it may appear on paper. The fact that it has a little bit of skill reduction and becomes enraged when an enemy dies, that part is kind of fun. So it's like if you kill somebody and he's in the top slot, he becomes enraged and gets all of his mana back. Kind of fun, but ultimately not necessarily the most exciting troop. But he's out there. He is going to get you 2 arcane trait stones with every time you get him, since he costs 400 glory. So absolutely not the worst troop in the world to get a bunch of. At a minimum, it's a really great opportunity to get some more arcane trait stones. And then for the event this time around, so you guys got access to Doomed Club in the event shop. So if you go up to tier 3 with your purchases, you will get your Doomed Club. And Doom Club is one of the damage type versions of a Doom weapon, which means that it's an amazing one. So this is going to be turning all greens into Doom Skulls. And then whenever you're doing a boss fight in this scenario, whenever there's a Doom in the fight, you'll be creating 5 extra Doom Skulls. So just kind of a overall sick damage weapon, so that's all kind of fun. You do also happen to gain 3 mana for each brown enemy, so that's okay. So it allows you to get to casting again. You will need, again, your Earth Forge Scrolls, I'm guessing, without staring at it, or Mountain Forge Scrolls, whatever the brown Forge Scrolls are, to get this thing upgraded. If you are able to get it up to level 9, then this will get you a Dust Storm that comes with it. If you are able to get it up to 10, it will drain 2 mana from all the brown enemies on top of that. But as far as what else it does, it's really nothing all that interesting or crazy from a upgrade perspective. The Dust Storm would be the most noteworthy thing, I would say, if you can get it up to 9. Be aware that if you do get it up to 7, however, this creating a brown gem means that it can potentially fail itself. So if it has alignment, if like you see that there's, skull, green gem, skull, skull, you'll cast Doom Club, and then that green gem will turn into a Doom Skull, so now you've got a 4 match. But then this creates a brown gem somewhere within that 4 spot, and now you don't have an alignment for a 4 or 5 match, and maybe you just left the entire enemy board with a really easy setup to hurt you a lot. So just be aware if you do get it up over 7. The odds of that happening aren't the highest on the planet, but it is a chance that it could happen. So Doom Club out there, feel free. As far as the event teams that we got, I put together 2 different ones. So for the higher level folks that have more things, this team should be very, very effective at running through. So this is Mang with Skull Converters, as well as Diviner. Diviner is in here to help Wrath get mana, as well as to cleanse if you do potentially need it. But beyond all of that, this will just, you get your extra attack from stealing the armor here, and then you just blow the crap out of people using Wrath and Glaceon for extra skull damage. And then Diviner is really just there to add some utility to the whole situation. So this should be very effective and helpful. Feel free to steal that. Description has the code. And then if you are a lower level player, this is generally the same exact idea, just using different kinds of more readily available troops. So there's no skull creators in this situation, but there are mana converters in this situation. So this should allow you to just force the board to constantly be moving around. So even though you're not going to have a way of creating skulls, you'll be very protected as long as your Titan is up to level 40 for that barrier on browns. This will be able to get you brown mana in the Dwarven Zombie. And then the Drake Rider will be able to get you red mana, if I can click it. And then just do some passive damage. And then again, Diviner here just to help you get more yellows, as well as potentially cleansing if you need it. So this team should also be effective, again, in the description below. But then we get into the Soul Forge. And the Soul Forge for you guys is kind of it's okay. So of the ones available to you, Famine's in there. I do not necessarily think he is absolutely insane that he's worth crafting. He is pretty fun though. He does drain the mana from all enemies, and then the damage he's doing is boosted by the mana drained ×2. So the amount of damage he can do to one person can be theoretically very, very strong. If you imagine each person on their team has 20 mana and they're all full, this will be doing an extra 160 damage at that point in time. For me, at least. So that would be kind of crazy. But that's kind of like, it is crazy, but it has no loop potential, so that's not necessarily the best. This aspect of Famine thing, the first enemy losing 3 skills at the start of every turn, that's not necessarily the most exciting, most insane thing on the planet. So in terms of traits, there's really nothing crazy, but this Locust Swarm casting thing is pretty crazy. So if the other team does have tons of mana, this can be devastating. If they don't have a ton of mana yet, then not necessarily the most devastating. So it's kind of an odd thing because you want the other team to have started in some capacity in order to take the most effect of him. So interesting troop, not necessarily the craziest, but he's out there. He is one of the higher tiers of all the things that are available. However, if there was a mythic that you needed to craft this week, this would be the one that I would recommend personally. So Jotner is in here. He does give a random ally a barrier every 4 or 5 match. So you will constantly be passively barriering everybody on your team just by having Jotner in the lineup. Just with this in there, he's already kind of worth noting. However, he does do true damage to a targeted enemy, boosted by barriered allies and giant allies. Okay, this damage doesn't seem that great. What? The boost is ×7. So ×7 boost means that if you have 4 people barriered on your team, which is not uncommon running someone like Jotner, that's an extra 28 true damage. And then if you have 4 giants on your team, that's another 28 true damage. So bringing that up to 56 extra true damage on top of the existing true damage. So you can see how much true damage that is just by getting a bunch of mana. And then if you have someone like Hyndla Frostcrown on your team, you're getting an extra 2 magic every single time you get a 4 or 5 match on top of getting a barrier every 4 or 5 match. So Jotner can be somebody that is pretty darn devastating and utility defensive oriented. So of all the mythics in there, I think Jotner gets the strongest recommend. Faux show. He's out there. Death is in there. I can't even find him by typing the word death. So that's kind of sad. Apparently there's tons of troops. Oh, I don't even have death, actually. That might be why. My god. All right. Death's in there. The punchline about Death is that he's not worth crafting, admittedly. So the amount of damage he does isn't all that interesting. His traits aren't necessarily all that interesting. So there's nothing really interesting about Death. So all of that searching just to say don't really craft him. And then Fallen Valdez in there, which is what I consider to be one of the worst mythics in the game. So not worth crafting either. So that's everything going on in the Soulforge. Let's jump into the spoilers. In the spoilers for the Switch, we have on Tuesday a faction assault for the Crypt Keepers. So Crypt Keepers out there, if you want to jump on through, this is a team that you can use for this. It's very, very simple and easy to use. You just use a Mountain Crusher and then double Gargoyle and then Possessed King just to keep the mana bouncing all over the place in your favor. If you don't have Possessed King, feel free to replace that with pretty much any mana generator that you'd like underneath. Really, the damage is just coming from your 2 Gargoyles. You can just trade on between them. You can climb and climb and climb with just that team, so feel free, be happy. Description has the codes. On Wednesday, there's a pet event. It is for Mimic. This is the gold bonus pet, so please make sure you jump in and actually take advantage of that. On Thursday, it's going to be a Warlord class event, so that's kind of fun. But then we get to all of the fun stuff on Friday. So on Friday, you guys will be getting a new Mythic, and it's kind of one of the best ones, if I can spell High King Iron Gut. So this guy is basically your Delve champion, super champion. He's the best delving troop on the planet in the game. So what he does is that he has a chance to devour an enemy based on his attack. So whatever his attack is his percent chance to devour. So you can imagine if you're doing this in a Delve scenario where you have your treasure hoard up a good amount, he'll have even higher stats than whatever he normally does. And if you just have some troop that gives him attack, for instance, then you'll be able to force it to have a 100% chance to devour. And after you devour the first enemy, if you didn't have a 100% chance before, you certainly do now. And beyond on all of that, he also steals 4 life whenever you match brown gems. So High King Iron Gut really just makes delving insanely easy. He is able to be used in events in other capacities, but for the most part, delving is where he shines the most. So I do wish you best of luck in getting him. He is absolutely a must-get mythic. If you are at all serious about this game, you want to get your hands on High King Iron Gut, so you can be doing those delves a lot easier, a lot faster, having access to the best troops to get the job done. Of course, this will scale beautifully throughout the entire thing, so please, do your best to try and get yourself some High King Iron Gut at the end of the week this week on Friday. He'll be in there from Friday all the way until the next week's Thursday. So best of luck trying to get that guy. And then the delve that you guys are getting this time around is the Warrens. So you can see from the layout here that the Warrens is a little rough in that you're going to have to be doing a bunch of fights to get to the boss, kind of regardless. So that's not the best. And then as far as the troops that are available in there, they're kind of these interesting troops. So let's take a glance at the Warrens here. So if we take a glance at what's in the Warrens, it is these fine folks. So Trickster is somebody that explodes the board and then switches the first and the last enemy. So this is kind of useful and interesting. It does start battles with 75% mana. So if you're trying to take advantage of Trickster, he's out there. That is theoretically interesting and useful. Since he starts out with 75% mana, that's really not that hard to get him full. Literally any match that is purple or green will get him full. And then he gets to explode the board and switch the first and last enemies. So that can be kind of fun. Bunnycorn's in there, which is just charming a random enemy and then creating 7 yellow. Also starts with 75% mana, so that's kind of fun. Lapina Knight is kind of the frontliner of this delve, so she's reducing skulls by 25% and then can also dodge skulls 20% chance. Then she's doing damage to somebody, but then giving everybody on your team a random status effect. So that could be Barrier, that could be Submerge, that could be Enchant. That can be fun. So that's a little interesting and random. But the legendary in there is Ms. Luna. So she's exploding a random gem whenever you match yellow gems. So what's fun about that is that that isn't a 4 or 5 match. That's just any yellow match. So from a mana generation and utility point of view, that's already super cool. But then we get to this, which is doing damage to everybody, and then either doing 1 to 2 status effects to all enemies or 1 to 2 status effects to all allies. So when you cast her, sometimes the other team gets completely neutered, sometimes your team gets completely buffed, sometimes it's minor, sometimes it's major. So she's kind of a mixed bag as well. But she is also a very cool, fun troop to have. So absolutely do recommend going out there and trying to get your hands on some Luna. But the delve in general, if you can get through the first fight, it is really not too bad. So the problem that you're going to have when you actually do this delve is that this first fight that you run into, these tricksters are going to flip your people around. So this guy's going to go where Possessed King is, and Possessed King's going to go where the Mountain Crusher is. So the trick is that on the very first fight, if you get switched by a trickster, make sure you let the trickster switch you again before you defeat the fight. And again, the reason for this is that delving in the Warrens requires a bunch of fights. So you don't want to do these fights with your team upside down and backwards. So if you get flipped by Trickster, let them flip you again in this first fight. And then in the last fight, just go ahead and smash them down. But the Warrens is an insanely good delve as far as rewards are concerned, since there are so many rooms in there. So make sure you get in there, have a little fun. But that is everything going on the Switch side of things. And that is everything that everyone's getting. So all platforms are getting a super sick mythic. All platforms are getting a new delve. It is just a great time to be alive in Gems of War. What's awesome. So beyond all of that, I've got more streams and videos, of course, going on. But as you may or may not have noticed, this channel is rolling up close to 1,000 subscriptions. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for tuning into my videos, watching my content, tuning into the streams, of course. We have probably some of the coolest people in our streams, so that is super great. But as a reward / thank you to everyone, once I get to 1,000 subscribers, I am planning on having a stream of streams, if you will. A stream where I am going to be devastating my own body by doing like shots of hot sauce and alcohol and all kinds of random crap while I'm playing Gems of War and talking to you beautiful people. So if that at all sounds interesting to you, make sure you subscribe and tune in to future videos and content. I imagine I should get there within a week or so. So potentially at the end of next week, you will all get to witness me killing myself for your entertainment. So look forward to that. I certainly am. I've already bought all the hot sauce and the alcohol, so it should be a grand old time. But that is everything I got for you guys this week. Best of luck with everything that's going on, and I will see you in a future video.